I had students, they all were coming in with these energetic backpacks of trauma and stress and overload and overwhelm and dysregulation. And I did not know where to begin on that journey.
The role of the educator, it's always been, you need to understand and gather knowledge so that you can input that knowledge into students' minds.
Right.
But AI has so much knowledge. And so what does our role as educators become now and in the future?
And how can we even compete with that, right? Like, that's cheap and easy. I went from the worst year to totally transitioning and beginning to love being in a classroom again. And by the end of that school year, it was even my colleagues, my fellow teachers were starting to be like, what are you doing that's so different?
Beth, in 2022, I had the honor and privilege of meeting you on the first day of our Breathe for Change training and then supporting you throughout that entire journey. And I know that you were in education for 20 years before that?
Easily, yeah. We'll just stop at 20. Yeah.
20 plus. Incredible. And so I would love to know, what inspired you to be an educator and just commit your life to education? What was that initial pull towards becoming a teacher in the first place?
That's a really beautiful question. I think it's different for everybody, right? But I think what is similar for all educators is just that organic heart pull that is indescribable, that is just so a piece of who we are.
Oh, I remember it deeply.
Oh, and yeah, and it's almost like a gravitational force that you can't, because it wasn't in the front of my mind. My mother was a teacher, my aunties were teachers, right?
Third grade teacher, elementary school teacher. Yeah.
It's something where you're surrounded by it and it's so normalized, but it wasn't something that I had in the front of my mind that I wanted to do. And yet it's where I kept tripping into. And so by the time I was in college and I was moving towards it, it became undeniable. And I went ahead and finished that and then jumped right into a classroom. I started with kindergarten and then jumped the second year right into middle school. I was all over the place. Oh, yes. And
wow, that is the most stark difference I can ever imagine for the first 2 years of your teaching.
Although it's kind of like they're exactly the same. It's just body size is totally different, right? But we're all just kindergartners stumbling around the world.
Yes.
But, readily, I walked in really believing I had everything I needed to get started on this journey. And I was so excited. And I had no question in my mind that I was going to get in there and make a profound difference. And it was so inspired and I just knew it was going to be fulfilling. What really awakened me quickly was the abrupt shift in energetic when I got into the classroom, just how challenging the structure of it was. I had everything that I needed to deliver curriculum.
You knew how to teach math.
I knew
how to teach reading.
I could do the basics of academia, but I had a really rough time with classroom management. I had students at all levels, kindergarten all the way through the middle school. It wasn't different because I changed grade levels. They all were coming in with these energetic backpacks of trauma and stress and overload and overwhelm and dysregulation. And I did not know where to begin on that journey.
I had the exact same experience. I'll never forget. The summer after I was in my teacher prep program, I went into my classroom and I was like, I'm going to be in teaching for life. Yep. I'm ready.
Yep.
I can't wait. I'm inspired. I'm going to be in this for decades and make such a big difference. And within a few months, I was at home on my couch crying every day.
Yep. And exhausted.
Literally, could not get up.
Yep. Yeah.
And so overwhelmed.
Yeah.
Felt like I didn't know I was getting myself into this.
No.
But yet, the heart of wanting, wait, but I have to keep going. I have to keep going for the kids.
Exactly. And that's exactly what I did. I pushed through and I got better at the classroom management, but it wasn't the fulfilling experience I wanted it to be. I kept pushing through. And I think more than anything, all of those pieces normalized and I could survive it, but I wasn't loving it. And each year I got a little further away from the love of it. And that's where I actually got to the hardest year that I had into this, and it was 2022. COVID was hard for educators.
So
we all know
20
this.
years into teaching.
This is all the way in, right? So I have been in it, and I had a really challenging group. I had some very, very severe trauma histories in my class that year, and I was so empty. I couldn't reach them. I just didn't have what it took to give anymore. I had over given. And that's where I magically got this email, a couple of them from Breathe for Change. I ignored it in the beginning, but there was this sense of I have to answer this call. And so I signed up for my initial training. And that first night I was like, so I got on my first Zoom call with all of these educators from across the country. And for the first...
I remember meeting you.
I know, I remember meeting you too. And
so beautiful.
At first I was like, this is too good to be true. This can't be real. But I got in these rooms and I was chatting with these educators from all levels. There were high school teachers, there were college educators, there were early childhood folks. Like we were all present.
Oh, every single type of educator, social workers, principals, paraprofessionals.
Yes.
All of it.
And administrators. And we were in these rooms having these conversations, and there were real tears and real shares about how hard it was. And for the first time, I got off that call, and for the first time, I looked back through my career and I felt validated and seen, and it was normalized. And it wasn't, I think so often we as educators, we will hide behind our classroom walls, and we think our struggle is so much worse than what everybody else is going through. Not like almost like we're doing it wrong. And I think what I learned was I wasn't doing it wrong. Like I was missing pieces of myself. I had to put myself back together first before I could even consider putting a classroom together.
Well, you're literally speaking to the reason I started Breathe for Change in the first place. Which was like, coming back to my own story as a teacher, which is so similar to yours, which is so similar to millions of educators across the country. It's so, so stressful. And there's this, we're such givers. So we give so much of ourselves to our students, to our communities, to everyone in our personal lives. I mean, give all day. And we're professional at that.
Absolutely.
But then what are we giving to ourselves? And it's like literally nothing. We don't even know how to give to ourselves. And I burnt out. And, it was wild. Last year, the stats came out. Teaching is the most burnt out profession in the entire country. More so than mental health professionals, more so than medical professionals that are so stressful. And it's because we were never taught in teacher education programs that it was important to take care of ourselves.
No, those are the tools that we are not given. Those are that piece is not given, and it's not even on the menu to be offered.
And in addition, it's not on the menu to your point earlier, classroom management.
Oh my gosh.
Oh, by the way, you're likely going to have students showing up in your classrooms who are dealing with imaginable amounts of trauma in the home.
Right.
And here's some tools to address that. We didn't get taught that in our teacher education programs. And when I realized that, having gone through an alternative teacher education pathway myself, and then also through my PhD, literally being a faculty member in a teacher education program, like the number one, curriculum and instruction department in the entire world. And I saw, wow, literally in all the contexts, this is not prioritized. Educator well-being and our ability to deal with stress and burnout, and then also our students' mental health.
Right.
Like, how are we supposed to teach if they're coming in with all this pain And we aren't equipped with the tools to be with them in that. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's what we have to give. That's what we have to be giving to them. But we can't give it. What I learned through this program is we can't give it to them before we give it to ourselves. We have to fully embody and practice this work before it can be accessible to anyone outside of ourselves. This isn't something that you can go dog and pony show in front of people. It really does have to be a lived experience. And through my Breathe for Change path, I continued on. As you know, I'm still here. 5 years, 3 years in? No, 4 years in. 4 years in. And a lot has happened since. Things radically shifted for me.
Tell me more about that. Like what shifted in you, even throughout just the training part?
Yeah. Well, like I said,
your initial training.
That initial piece was about validation and community and an accessible community where truth got to come forward and we got to hold space for one another and share just how tremendously challenging this is. And when you get to a place where you can share that and it's not just you, there's no longer any taking it personally. There's no longer any self-judgment. There's just not room for it. If this is the collective experience, there's no room for personal judgment. And so then you begin to get curious again, which is where all growth gets to happen, right?
Absolutely.
So you get curious and you start saying, so then what is it? Why is this happening? And we examined it and we started finding that we ourselves were walking into our classrooms empty and unfulfilled. And we were going in there searching for that fulfillment, but we had to be fulfilled first, right? So we started these practices. Like I learned skills like a regular yoga practice. I learned things like meditation, breath work, journaling, changing inner frameworks, those kinds of things, which seem so outside of the realm of education.
When you say inner frameworks, you're talking about that itty bitty shitty committee inside your head.
I will never forget the first day you said that out loud. Oh my gosh.
It's so good. Itty bitty shitty committee. We all have it.
Yeah.
It's like all the time saying, you're not good enough. You're not smart enough. You'll never be loved.
Right.
You don't have time to take care of yourself. You're not worthy of that. And then it's like we start to believe that as truth.
Yes. And then we live it as truth.
We live it as truth.
Yes.
Our whole lives. I'm not good enough.
No.
So then we strive to be perfectionists, overperform, do a million things. Like
overgive.
Overgive.
Yep. Yeah.
But then when we get to the root, and this is what we did, this is what you're talking about in training. Oh, wait, that's the story I've been telling myself? Is that really true? And is that actually serving me? And then we have the power to change our story.
Yeah.
Oh, I am good enough.
Yeah.
I'm brilliant. I am remarkable. I'm lovable.
Yeah.
That's game changing.
Yeah. And then you add the community on top of it that is holding you accountable to carry forward.
You got all these accountability buddies.
Man, and boy did they. Like they really did show up and I was able to do that for them as well, right? So none of us was walking this path alone. And so I wasn't even pulling these things into my classroom in the beginning. I was just doing this myself. And even without taking what I was learning and applying it in a direct way to my kids, my classroom started to shift.
Say more.
Well, honestly, it was just, I felt like things quieted. It was like my presence shifted enough that things quieted in that classroom. And I wasn't triggering the way that I had been. I was responding rather than reacting. And then from there was able to start giving the kiddos little pieces of this and start to empower them to do these kinds of things. And within that school year, because I started the program with you in January and then finished, and through that semester, I went from the worst year to totally transitioning and beginning to love being in a classroom again. I was on my way out. I was on my way out.
Yeah, you were done.
And by the end of that school year, it was even my colleagues, my fellow teachers were starting to be like, what are you doing that's so different? Like you are really, they noticed it in me even before they noticed it in my classroom. And then the following year, my administrators really started to pay attention. And it really escalated from there. I was asked to start giving some professional development to...
Didn't you give a keynote at the Montana State Conference, my friend?
Yeah, I did. So that was, yeah, I know. And that was, so I gave PD to my district first. And then my principal shared with several of the other principals that they're all in communication. Thank heavens they have that community together. They need each other. But she shared with them what I brought in, and they were like, whoa, that's cool. My teachers need that. One thing led to another, and I got an invitation to go be the closing keynote speaker to our Montana Administrative Conference that winter.
And here she is, Beth Schreiber.
And I moved the administrators through some of the practices. And
which practices?
Well, we started just with simple 3 collective breaths, right? We all just came together in space.
Let's do it together.
Okay, let's do it. Ready? 1. And inhale. And one last breath. It's just, there's something about it. And to do that in a room. What's funny too is that before I even started that, I was warned by the leaders of this conference. They said, listen, you're our closing keynote. This is the end of the conference. You're going to have people walking out. Don't take it personally, right? They're going to be on their computers. They're plugging back in. They have to go back to work. And so I just invited them at the beginning of the conference. I said, we're going to be working on presence here. We're going to breathe for presence together today. And that's what I'm going to ask you to be, is fully present. We're going to do this for an hour. Let's just stay fully present for an hour here. And they did. And none of them left.
No
way.
They
didn't open their computers, and they weren't, other than taking pictures of the slides, like their technology was quiet. And you could just feel they were we talk about educators, but I think so often this is a population we forget about as our administrators. Like, they're carrying so much of the responsibility. And it was beautiful to witness them receiving this. And there were tears, and there were just beautiful shares amongst them. We did several different all of our questioning protocols that we use.
I love them.
And
equitable sharing protocol, where each person gets the equal opportunity to share in response to a vulnerable prompt, or we got mindful listening. That one's my favorite.
Yeah.
Where each person shares and then you reflect back what you heard me say.
And that's exactly what these administrators did.
Wow.
And I think so often they are speaking to their groups of people without knowing whether they've been heard. And the feedback I got from that one is that to be heard was tremendously moving for them. That's where we saw a lot of tears, is to really get that share back of, I heard you. And I valued what you shared.
And this was with administrators across your entire state?
Our entire state.
Wow.
Yeah, at all levels, all of our different superintendents, all the way down to our vice principals or directors, they needed it. And they're, in Montana, we're really spread out. So a lot of them really, their professional lives are done with a lot of isolation. Mm-hmm. And so for them to be able to come together really intimately in community seemed profound and healing. And it was a beautiful experience. And then, anyway, it was really, really exciting. And then from there, I was invited to a few different schools to go outside of my district and go and do this with more teachers.
As a second grade teacher?
I was still actively teaching my second grade classroom. Yeah.
Wow. And I know, tens of thousands of educators who have been through Breathe for Change training. It's like, that what you are doing is working. You feel it.
Yes.
You see the results in your student, behaviors and also academic performance.
Yep.
But then I remember when we launched our master's degree program. You're like, I'm going to be in the first cohort. Yep. I'm going to graduate with my master's degree from Breathe for Change.
And I did.
And you did. Oh, last June, our first cohort. Oh,
Yeah.
so inspiring. But I had the honor of being your faculty advisor in the master's program. And I'll never forget, as we continued to meet and you were, for your initiative that you had to do in the practicum, you decided to focus not on the students in your classroom because you had done so much work there, but on the educators at your school.
Yeah.
And then you saw remarkable outcomes. So can you talk a little bit about the research that you conducted in your master's degree and what you saw?
Absolutely. So part of when I said my colleagues reached out to me and said, what are you doing? It was one of the things that we implemented immediately was a twice weekly yoga practice. And I had this core group of educators that were coming twice a week at the end of the school day, making it really accessible, where they just would come into my classroom and we would practice yoga. We would my kids would even clear the stuff for us at the end of the day, and they would come in and we would practice. And then we scaffolded in. When I started the research, I wanted to also see what the SEL component, all of the SEL practices that are a part of Breathe for Change's framework, how we could implement those in with this yoga practice for the teachers. And so we would do an hour of yoga and then we would close with a short SEL practice that then they had in their toolbox to take to their classroom the next day.
Like the 3 collective breaths or the 2-word check-in.
Or a weather report or nonviolent communication. I mean, all of these really amazing things. And lo and behold, these teachers started doing this. And I predicted their stress levels would come down because I know they did for me.
Because we know that this works.
Right? And I mean, I think it's clear in the medical community now too that a practice like yoga is a beautiful stress reduction technique, right? We just know this. What I didn't see coming was we added some questions in my surveys with these teachers about job satisfaction. And so I really didn't know if we would see much difference there, but it was remarkable what happened.
I remember the aha moment for both of us looking at your data.
So in the beginning, there was high levels of stress, low levels of job satisfaction. They were looking for other jobs, other careers entirely.
Just like you were coming in to Breathe for Change.
Certain that they couldn't keep going. They just, not that they didn't want to, but that they didn't have what it took.
Depleted.
Yeah. 6 weeks. In 6 weeks, those graphs flip-flopped. Totally flip-flopped. Stress dropped dramatically. Job satisfaction to an equal amount rose. Did not see that coming. They were making comments and responding to the surveys saying, I do have what it takes to continue in this career. In 6 weeks. It was extraordinary. It almost brings me to tears. Because these were my people. These were my teachers, my colleagues, my work family. And to hear them and watch them and see what this brought to their self-worth and their self-value and their ability to continue on this path that gravitationally pulled them to it. It wasn't a choice, really. It was a demand to give that back, to watch them give that back to themselves was just a beautiful gift.
Oh, and you just spoke so beautifully to the quantitative data, right? Those graphs where it's like high stress, low satisfaction, and then the low stress, high satisfaction. I mean, that's literally addressing some of the most pressing challenges and crises in
across
education
the board,
right now, which is, I mean, I would say there are 3 major crises that we're facing, at least that Breathe for Change is here to address, which is educator stress and burnout and literally turnover, retention.
Oh, big.
I mean,
huge.
50% are leaving within the first 5 years of teaching. How in the world are we going to create a sustainable education system with that? You can't.
No.
And then student mental health, it's a crisis.
It's awful.
It's horrible. I mean, the statistics around that are devastating.
Yeah.
I mean, we were creating that mental health in schools course a couple years ago for our master's program. And I'll never forget the statistic that just broke my heart. Like I thought I knew until I read the most recent stat, which was in the last year, 20% of high school students 14 to 17 had come up with a plan to commit suicide.
Yeah.
And 9.5% of high school students, that's essentially 1 out of 10 kids in any high school class, tried.
Absolutely.
Unbelievable, unfathomable, and not okay.
No.
And then you educator stress and burnout, students stress and mental health, and then you have AI completely disrupting what it even means to teach and learn, right?
Absolutely.
Our whole, even identity, I think about the role of the educator. It's always been, you need to understand and gather knowledge so that you can input that knowledge into students' minds.
Right.
But AI has so much knowledge. And so what does our role as educators become now and in the future?
And how can we even compete with that? Right? Like that's cheap and easy.
Well, and I would argue we actually don't need to or shouldn't.
That's exactly
we got
right.
to use it as a tool and then do the pieces of the role of the educator that are uniquely human.
Precisely.
That AI cannot replace.
And what we know about how to do that has become a little bit of a hot button topic sometimes in schools. I mean, I work in a very conservative area which I think a lot of educators can bump up against a fear of some of these triggerable words right now, like a yoga practice is not going to be something that a lot of schools feel very safe bringing in, whether or not you can have the data that it shows that it's worth it.
Exactly. I mean, even some states literally don't allow yoga in
Precisely,
schools.
or the word mindfulness.
Or SEL even now.
Correct.
I mean, certain states are even moving away from the term social emotional learning, or literally
or you
will not give districts funding.
Precisely.
If they have any SEL curriculum.
That's exactly right.
And so, for the first 10 years of Breathe for Change, our core product was our mindfulness, social emotional learning, and yoga teacher training, which had all the outcomes that you talked about, right?
Yes. But don't you remember, I would come to you and I would say, I'm having a hard time finding the language to make this accessible. Once they see the results, they want what I'm doing. But then even my administrators would get a little bit fearful of how do we tell parents what we're doing? It felt like it was shameful because it was here we were doing exactly what we needed to be doing. The kids were doing well. But yet, how do we explain it to allow for everyone to feel safe and acceptable inside of this?
I remember leading trainings, for a decade, and having these open conversations with all of you about how do we use accessible language and inclusive language. So if yoga is not the word, then do not say the word yoga. Say, these practices, mindful practices, or maybe it's mindful movement, or maybe it's literally movement practices, or community building strategies versus social emotional learning. And so that's really why the tension you're talking about, it's like a polarization.
It was, yes, it's a polarization.
Politicized and polarized.
Yes,
that's what I'm trying to say.
It was both politicized and polarized, which is a shame.
Which is a shame because research shows we've got studies from Harvard and Stanford and University of Wisconsin. And now we have hundreds upon hundreds of
research projects,
degree capstone projects that show it. It's completely evidence-based.
Yes.
But the language is the problem.
And that was the one piece that I felt like I was still wrestling with. And then I showed up for my graduation at our 10-year reunion at Breathe for Change this summer, which was you talk about a moving experience.
Oh, that was one of the best experiences of my life.
It was. And you brought just the most beautiful anniversary gift to all of us in your what do I want to say? Presentation, your unveiling.
Keynote. The unveiling
of human intelligence. And you built a new framework. And do you remember as I came backstage, I burst backstage, like you were on a break and I burst backstage.
I will never forget this.
In tears because you broke the code. You found the language. You built the structure and the framework. And I'm covered in goosebumps right now. And I ran back there because we had gotten to this point where I just had this one little sticking point, and I'm watching you walk us through all of the pieces of this new human intelligence framework. And I was like, there it is. Mm-hmm. There's the language. There's the structure. This is a curriculum. How did you do that? What happened? What, like this? It felt like magic to me.
I mean, it was. I feel like, to your point, my co-founder, Michael, and I, and our team, we realized, especially as more tension was rising in education and the impact that our educators, including you, tens of thousands of you, were making in your classrooms, in your schools, in your organizations, in your communities. It was unbelievable. And I felt like there is no room for resistance here. What we are doing is not just social emotional learning or yoga or mindfulness or these practices that have become, contentious, so to speak.
Right.
What we are doing, especially in this context of like artificial intelligence growing and the focus on that, like being a big question mark, and what is the role of educators and students moving forward. I was like, we are doing human intelligence. And we realize that the tools and the practices and the strategies that we've been teaching for 10 years, that all of you are like implementing, that have been shared with 20 million students across the country whose lives are now transforming as a result.
Yeah.
Like, we're teaching them the human skills that they need to thrive in this rapidly changing world. And schools, I believe, have been absolutely limited in scope in terms of what they're focusing on actually teaching kids. It's like everything is about cognitive intelligence.
Yes.
It's like assessments matter, performance matters.
Yes.
Like multiple choice tests, memorization, all this like cognitive piece, which is very important. I'm not saying that is bad.
No, it is a giant aspect.
But these pieces that you talked about that you missed out in your teacher education program that would have fundamentally shifted your experience as an educator. You're talking about the intelligence of your body, your ability to be aware of and manage your own body. And then you're talking about your emotional intelligence, your capacity to feel and to honor your own emotional experience and to be able to regulate that and ask there's guidance in your emotions.
100%.
Instead of making them wrong or pushing them away, how can we accept them and honor them and hold space for them in schools? And then you're talking about social intelligence, right?
It's huge. It's huge.
Oh, the building community, when us as educators feel so isolated, or our students are feeling like, I don't belong here. Why should I even be here? It's like human connection matters. That social piece is so important in teaching and learning. So there's that social element. And then there's what we call at Breathe for Change universal intelligence, which goes directly back to what you started with in sharing about why you came into education in the first place. What's your purpose?
Yeah.
What matters to you? What's that thing that's greater than you, that's connecting you to something bigger than yourself?
Right.
And why aren't we bringing that into schools as a core competency and form of intelligence that literally is kind of foundational to everything? Because if we're not even tapped into what matters to us.
That's the drive for everything else. Yes.
Right.
That's what drives us.
Imagine a world where every single classroom and every single school, the whole focus was on how do we allow us to tap into our fullest passion, our fullest purpose, our fullest potential. And then from there, we dive into all of the learning stuff.
Because you can't tap into the learning, right? So then the question, and you can ask the question, looking back at my experience with my kids, is the classroom didn't just get more comfortable to be in. Their academic performance jumped.
Yes.
Right? So it's like, and why is that? I wasn't giving them new material. I wasn't even giving it to them in a different way. They were just in bodies and emotions and minds that were ready to learn.
I can visualize your students right now, and it's so beautiful. And for all of the amazing educators that are listening, like this, us talking about this esoteric human intelligence framework that we've created, who are like, what? Wait,
a little
what?
abstract, maybe. Yeah.
Somatic intelligence? What are you talking about? Like emotional intelligence? Okay, maybe I've heard of that.
Yeah.
Like social, universal. Why don't we take a moment to just like break down each of those layers?
Yeah.
And I would love for you to talk about, like, in your role as an educator and now director of curriculum of your whole district. Did we mention that?
It's a fun gig.
People saw what you were doing and literally they wanted you to become in charge of, fully responsible for the curriculum and implementation of that for every classroom in your district. It's like incredible and so inspiring.
Beautiful gift.
But why don't we break it down? So starting with somatic intelligence. So the definition, what we define as somatic intelligence is our capacity to sense and to move. It's like about us being aware of like the sensations in our body, making meaning of that, really attuning and listening to that so that we can then regulate ourselves effectively.
Yeah.
And then the ultimate goal, so to speak, of somatic intelligence is vitality. And so, you know, I would love for you to just kind of talk me through what were some of the actual practices that you taught, or whether it was with your students or the educators, like that fell into the lane of somatic intelligence, that layer.
Absolutely. Well, you know, I know one of the things that I did at both levels was a very simple body scan, right? Like we so often are not even aware of our physical bodies. And so I think that was a great starting point where we would just together as a collective, and I would just speak them through it of like, put all of your attention at the top of your head. And then we would just move down through the body. And I would just have them asking questions as we go of like, are you sensing any heat? Is it cold? Is there any pain there? Is any tension there? You know, what are you? And move through the entire body that way, and then come back and ask and ask them to share whether it's they share with a partner, they share with the whole, they write it down for themselves, and then take it one step further. Once they notice what they felt in their body, what is that feeling asking for?
Yeah.
Do I need a drink of water? Do I need to stretch? Am I hungry? Do I need more sleep tonight? Whatever it might be. And that one was a powerful one for both my littles and my colleagues, and one that I still use.
Well, that's the question of, what is my body telling me that I need? That question we were never taught to ask. And that's why so many of us burn out, is because we're not even listening.
Or totally disconnected
to what
I
we
would
need.
say. Yeah.
Completely disconnected.
Yeah.
And what a gift that is that you taught your students that practice and that you're sharing that with educators. And it's almost like forcing all of us who engage in these practices to not just be observing what's happening in our body, but to really listen to that question that you just asked. It's like, what is it communicating to me?
Yes, and then respond
instead of react in ways that we've all been there, where it's like you're just so done.
Yeah.
You're so frustrated, you're so overwhelmed,
and you
you're
don't
so
even
anxious,
know why.
and you're just like, ah!
Yes. Yeah. And then it becomes something where that body scan becomes more innate. And you just tend to start to notice when the body speaks, you listen more readily. And on and on and on. It's a beautiful thing.
So beautiful. And I know that when I was teaching, I would do these, the 3 collective breaths, but also the mindful movement practices with my kids, even whether it's just like a sun breath, taking a deep breath in, reaching up, and then back to your heart. Oh, I'm even feeling energized doing it right now.
I did that with the administrators when I was at the conference too, and they did beautifully. We did several different chair yoga poses. It was wonderful, and they liked it. And
they felt it. The beauty of these practices is they're so simple.
Yeah,
they're short, they're sweet, and then literally it might be 3 collective breaths is 10 seconds. Afterwards, you say,
that's right.
How do you feel? And it's like calm, grounded, ready to learn, inspired.
Because they're back in their body.
So that thank you for sharing more about somatic intelligence. I think that's like super helpful to hear practical strategies of like, what does this mean?
Yes.
What about emotional intelligence? So just to hone us in the definition, right? This is our capacity to feel, right? To feel emotionally, which means that the first competency that we've created at Breathe for Change is called affective awareness. That same thing, just a scientific way of saying emotional awareness, like our ability to notice and name our emotions, any emotion.
That's
even the ones that we might be pushing down or ashamed of or we're taught not to feel. And then you have like meaning making is the second competency. That's like, how are we actually processing these emotions that we're observing to make meaning of our experience? And then that third competency is integration. And I love this one because we debated for a long time, is this actually about regulation? And regulation of our emotions is so important, but it's not everything. It's like, yes, we need to regulate, but it's like the integration of the knowledge that our emotions have to offer. There's so much wisdom in our emotions. So integration, then we have acknowledgement, which is like, how can we honor and be with the emotional lives of other people? And both honoring ourselves and others. And then the final competency, you love it, wholeness.
Oh, wholeness is when, everything comes together.
Yeah, it's like we have an empowering relationship with all of our emotions.
There's room for everything.
For all of it. So how have you brought emotional intelligence to life tangibly?
Well, this one I love doing with our littles was the weather report because it's very storytelling and it's very imaginative. So in a weather report, it's a way that we would check in the morning. And rather than having them tell us how we feel, because you kind of said it when you were talking just a moment ago, that there are emotions we're not even really allowed to discuss. Many of us are raised where there are good emotions and bad emotions, which
you can't express anger, you can't speak up like that, or you can't cry.
Exactly.
It's bad.
Yeah. And none of this is true. They're all just part of our human experience, right? So a weather report takes away that language and allows them to describe by explaining our external physical weather as how we feel inside. And it just makes it really accessible to every kid knows weather, whether they've been grown in a class or in a home where all of the emotions have been discussed and they have that vocabulary or they don't. So I may say, I am sunny with a warm breeze today. I may say there's lightning and thunder and it's really, really windy, and I'm in Montana. So some of my kids will say it's a blizzard outside, and just depending on where we live, it's going to be. But you as the teacher and everyone else in the room gets a real sense of where this human is showing up in front of us right now, right? And they get a moment to fully express how they're showing up. And it's weather, so it's not good or bad. It just is.
And that's why that's one of my favorite effective awareness practices, because it is so accessible.
Yeah.
Because so many of us, kids, adults, you name it, all of us have even trouble identifying what we're feeling.
Totally.
But I know I'm having a thunderstorm right now.
That's right.
I know it's sunny in there right now, right? And so I just love that, right? Oh, one of my other favorite ones is the 2-word check-in, where, you invite your students or your colleagues or whoever it is that you're supporting to just take a moment, check in, notice how you feel. Let's do it right now.
Okay. I love it.
So just noticing how you feel right now. And then just find 2 words that describe the vibe of what is happening inside you right now. Just 2 words. And if your eyes are closed, you can gently open them. What are your 2 words?
Connected and inspired.
I am just joyful and grateful.
Yeah. It's beautiful.
So beautiful.
And that one's a beautiful gift too, because it links some of the cognitive intelligence in there as well. Because especially with, well, really, I think at all levels, because we get to begin to grow that rich emotional vocabulary. Those words, there are subtleties with emotions that many of us are not even kind of aware of. And what that can give to us as a gift, really expanding that out to all the shades of our basic emotions that we can do, profoundly affects the way that we can truly begin to care for ourselves and show up in the world.
100%. And the beauty is that when we actually, as educators, really tell our students, all of your emotions are welcome here.
Absolutely.
Then we're supporting them in actually experiencing that sense of wholeness. Like, I have an empowering relationship with every single one of my emotions. Shame, guilt, anxiety, fear.
Yeah.
It's like they're all welcome here.
And there's nothing wrong with me.
There's nothing wrong with me.
Yeah.
And gosh, don't you wish someone taught you that when you were a kid?
Yes, but I'm glad I know it now.
Yeah. And I love that you brought in the connection to cognitive intelligence, because all of the layers of human intelligence, even though we've broken them down into 5 layers, somatic, emotional, cognitive, social, universal, they are inextricably connected.
Totally interwoven.
Completely interwoven. And when you improve your emotional intelligence, you're also improving your somatic intelligence.
Yes.
When you're improving your social intelligence and you're connected and you feel more inspired, like you belong. Obviously, your ability to think, which is the definition of cognitive intelligence, is going to enhance.
100%.
Yeah.
100%.
So, I know that you are a total pro in social intelligence. And I would love to just, this is our capacity to relate and to belong. Right. And so these are competencies like, relational awareness, my ability to understand how you feel, also empathy, which is so important.
So important.
And our ability to effectively communicate and to ultimately belong. This is about cultivating a sense of belonging. So
absolutely.
What are some of the strategies that you've implemented to foster that social intelligence?
One of the most profound that I had not been introduced to this before Breathe for Change, is the framework of nonviolent communication. And, or the peace process, as we call it, right?
Yes.
So this
life-changing.
Life-changing. And this is something I did bring into my classroom. And then this year, actually, we opened our school year and my administrators asked me to take it to all of our PLCs and walk and do a quick training with every single one of our PLCs that this is how we will be conflict resolving this year, is through this framework, gave them a script, did all of that. So with nonviolent communication, it's an effective way to conflict resolve is the whole idea. And so, when historically kids would come in from recess and there's something big that happened out there, for example, right? Then it's just a mess and all of them are gang and everyone has something to say about it, but it's really just between these two. Giving these students the tools of nonviolent communication changes that whole dynamic by, rather than it turning into some big storm where everyone's involved and has something to say, the one who has felt harmed gets to bring that feeling to their friend, their partner in
beautiful.
In the classroom here, and say, when this happened, I felt this. That basic. And again, here we're cognitively growing, right? We're growing that emotional language.
And I will say, every time I have ever taught nonviolent communication, and I've taught it to hundreds of thousands of people, one of the things that I say is, it's so easy to say, you made me feel, or it made me feel, you made me feel. And you're literally pointing the blame outside yourself.
That's right.
But the beauty of this practice is we take full responsibility for our own emotional experience in relationship to another. So I feel, or I felt, and that small distinction makes so much of a difference, because when we own our emotional experience, no one can take that away from us.
That's right. And
so beautiful.
And we then are empowered to go get our needs met, which is that next step to say, next time, will you please? Or, even just right here, right now, can I please have an apology? Whatever it might be, And
so
the kids, they picked up on it so rapidly, so readily. And before I knew it, it was happening without my getting involved. And they were conflict resolving on their own.
That was my favorite experience as a teacher, where I would model the peace process or nonviolent communication, with my co-teacher or with another student. And then I would say, we're going to go to the peace corner to do this.
Yeah.
And then within like 1 month or 2 months, I was like, are they actually going to pick this up? No more tattling, no more conflict. Literally, I was like, how is this even possible? Behavior issues were like down.
Yeah.
And all I would hear is, Miss Ilana, we solved our problem in the peace corner.
That's right.
They went and did it themselves.
Right.
And I just heard the solution.
Because they were empowered to do it.
Yes.
Because when they're coming to us to tattle and do that, they're looking for empowerment, right?
Yes.
That's all they're looking for.
Yes.
So let's empower them.
Totally.
Yeah.
Oh, that practice is so profound and so incredible. And it becomes, when you implement it in your classroom and then with educators at your school or in your organization, it becomes part of the culture in how you literally communicate.
Yeah.
And then if you add a layer of like facilitating and co-creating community agreements at the beginning of the school year, whether it's like with your whole staff at school or in your organization, as well as in your classroom, and you're like, okay, how are we going to treat each other? How are we going to be? And then you have agreements to align to. Like, that is social intelligence.
Yeah.
Because you're literally supporting each other in learning how to relate to one another respectfully, kindly.
Yeah. And since it was co-created, there's full buy-in from all parties.
Accountability buddies.
That's right.
Comes back into play here.
That's exactly right.
Amazing. Well, there's so many different ways that we, teach social intelligence, whether it's like community mindful movement poses or just all these different protocols, the mindful listening, the equitable sharing, all of this is building social connection.
Yes.
But one of the things that I feel like I was the most esoteric when we created this framework, but the most beautiful was the universal piece.
And I think educators,
they embody this because this is why they get into the profession, period.
More than almost any other profession on the planet, I do believe we're not in it for the money or the fame, folks.
Yes.
No, we're in it for the calling.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And, this idea of having universal intelligence be integrated into teaching and learning to be, foundational. Like, how can we all just tap into our purpose and teach from there and live from there and learn from there? That's what education needs to be about.
Absolutely. It's beautiful. I was just in a school improvement team meeting, and the high school teachers were talking about one of the biggest stumbling blocks right now is apathy in their high school students. And you hear that across the board. We hear it all the time.
Well, I would be apathetic if no one asked me the question, what do you care about and
what do you
why?
care about? That's exactly right.
I mean, of course they're apathetic.
Right.
They walk into school and it's like, go do that math worksheet. Or go do this, but I'm not told why, or it's not connected to what I care about, or like, I don't understand its purpose. Of course I'm going to be apathetic and not want to be there and likely have some mental health challenges.
Right.
Because no one's asking me why I am here. What do I want? What do I want for my life? What's important to you?
And reflecting back to you that it really matters and that you're needed here. Yeah.
And that's what education is for you
Absolutely.
to answer that question is, why are you here?
Yeah.
And let's support you with the skills and the tools to get you towards where you want to be. And that's going to look so different for you, Beth, than it is for you, Sam, than it is for you, Michael, than it is for you, Taylor, than it is for you, Julia, than it is for you, Chris. Yeah. And it's not the same for everyone. So we can't teach the same to everybody, but we can create this space where everyone has the ability and the gift of being able to fully honor who they are and work towards becoming who they want to become.
Yes. And speak it and share it. And there's room for all of it. Yeah.
So beautiful. Well, it's been such an honor to not only witness your journey through Breathe for Change since 2022, but also, I mean, you've inspired me so deeply to my core and have become such a dear friend of mine that now being a faculty with you and leading the master's program together and having you share the gifts of your teaching and your heart to, now thousands upon thousands of educators. It's so amazing. So if any of you ever take Breathe for Change, you're going to meet Beth and you're going to get, you're going to get so much more. So what are your final words of wisdom to educators out there who are doing their best every day?
You're so needed. You're so needed and you're so valuable and you're not doing anything wrong. It's just these are pieces that we are missing as a collective in our process to learn to do this job. And it's okay. And we're like, it's not too late.
No.
It's not too late. And it can work quickly. This is one of those things where once we truly can commit to giving ourselves back to ourselves, everything does just kind of begin to fall back into place.
Everything changes.
Yeah.
And, we have just so many resources, a community, just so much support. So if you are feeling alone and you're an educator, like you are.
Yes, right?
Just come hang out with us.
Yeah, you're not alone. You really are not.
Yeah, you're not. And we're not going to let education stay stagnant. That's we can't. We're done with that.
No, and that's the other thing too. Every educator knows we're beyond the point of needing a drastic change.
The future of education,
let's be the change.
It's human. So let's bring the humanity back into it. And that's what we're doing.
Yeah.
I love you, Beth.
I love you so much.
Thank you so much for sharing everything. And to be continued as always.
Forever and
You're
always.
such a gift.
You're a gift.